Hi, I'm Sarah Scott. I'm a licensed professional counselor based out of Houston, Texas. I work with individuals across the lifespan. My youngest client is about 5 years old, and my oldest is in their 50s. And I mostly work with people who are neurodivergent. So that means folks with a diagnosis of autism, ADHD, sometimes both, as well as related conditions like folks who are intellectually gifted or who are intellectually impaired, people struggling with specific learning differences like dyslexia, dyscalculia, or dyspraxia, as well as people who are what we call highly sensitive individuals. A lot of the folks who get referred to me have what I like to call autism plus, which is autism and another mental health diagnosis. So, for example, autism and major depression, autism and a personality disorder, etc., etc. It can be really hard for a lot of the folks I work with to find someone who's a good fit, who can both adapt to where their baseline is, which might be a little bit different from the typical population, and can provide them with skills that will help them overcome those mental health challenges. We don't want someone who comes to therapy to think that they have to stop being autistic in order to become healthy. That's just not true, that's not realistic, and that's not helpful. But being autistic doesn't mean that you have to struggle with depression or anxiety for the rest of your life. My goal is to try to connect with people who may have had trouble connecting with therapists in the past and help them figure out what a good and meaningful life looks like for them. I do that mostly through talk therapy. And so being able to talk in session and find those not so helpful thinking patterns and examine ways of where did this come from? How is it serving me? What can I change in the future? I don't do a lot of play therapy. So for my younger kiddos, they do have to be able to talk about their thoughts and feelings for at least 30 minutes with or without their parents present. And if they need someone who can be more play therapy oriented, I'm happy to provide those referrals for my families. Um, the main modality I use is something called cognitive behavioral therapy, but I'm not a very manualized therapist with that. I'm not going to be frog marching you through a workbook unless you really, really want me to. But the core idea of cognitive behavioral therapy is looking at those situations that make us not so happy and saying, okay, what's going on? What was I thinking? How did that make me feel? And then how did I act on my feelings? And in looking at that cycle, we try to notice some of those repeating patterns or thoughts. I like to call those thinking shortcuts because it's less judgmental, and sometimes they're true. They're just a shortcut we take to reach a conclusion. But if that is making my feelings more extreme, or it's really painful, or it's leading to coping behaviors that are not so helpful or are not making me happy, they're not helping me reach my goals, we want to take a look at that, check the evidence, and figure out how else can I look at this situation? How else can I cope with it? And what is going to help me live a life that is meaningful for me and matches my values and is going to serve me in the long run? I also do a fair amount of vocational counseling for my teenagers and young adults, and sometimes my older adults as well who might be looking to make a career change. And that is helping folks figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are, look into different programs for either vocational training or for college, what sort of supports or accommodations they might need to request, and generally helping people navigate that sometimes complex situation. I'm available to meet in person or virtually, and I am an out-of-network provider, but I can provide a super bill that you can file for reimbursement, and I'm also very happy to talk about sliding scale options in order to make therapy accessible for as many people as possible. I welcome anyone to reach out to me and request referrals or resources for problems they might be struggling with. And if you would like to schedule your first meeting with me in order to see if we could be a good fit for therapy, then I ask you to visit my website, sarahscottlpc.com. That's Sarah with an H, Sarah, Scott, Scott, LPC.com. It'll give you lots of information about where my office is, what my phone number is, what my email is, how to book with me, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you so much for watching my video.